If you go back to your childhood, you probably remember starting and stopping coffee makers for mom and dad. You probably remember starting and stopping other appliances for them as well. You definitely remember pressing all of the radio buttons in your car as often and as much as you could. As a result of all of this button pushing that you've been doing your whole life, it's relatively ingrained in you that buttons drive action. And as a result, you can do a lot of interesting and very important things in your life and have buttons like these become the most important piece in your smart home. Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. Now I'm going to go through 3 different buttons and you'll see a lot of different examples of how buttons can be utilized, and there are even more ways that I'm going to talk about here today. But the first button we're going to start with is the Samsung SmartThings button. It's a smart button, it's wireless, you can see that I can move it around, and it's powered by a battery that will last a very long time. Now what started to tip me off about this is how my parents were actually employing this. They utilize this for a lot of lighting in their home, and that's because they don't want to remember all the different names of lights and ask their voice assistants to do everything. So this little button solves that for them, and they use it for a ton of different lighting setups. Now I've set it up here in my studio, and so when I press the button, you can see the lighting went out behind me here. That's my blue lighting that you normally see on the channel. So a single press, and this is where I say there's 3 different presses, a single press turns the lights on blue. Now a double tap actually turns them on to a red color, so you can see that behind me, and I can turn them off again. Now there's a third thing, which is just the hold. So you can see that hold has turned the lights on white, and these are just the things that I set up inside of Samsung SmartThings. So you could set this up for a number of different lighting solutions, and again, this can move around. You don't have to remember what you're doing with your lights, and it's very easy to press it multiple times to kind of figure out, okay, yeah, it turns red if I double tap it. People get used to these buttons very quickly. The next button I want to talk to you about is called the Aeotec Nanomote Quad. Now, this is a ZWave button, and it has 4 different buttons on it. This device, I'm going to call it a device, not a button anymore, because it can be set up to trigger automations in almost limitless ways. Really, the limit becomes what you can remember or what you want to set up. Now, there's 4 buttons, and probably the way you're going to use this the most often is either a press or a hold of any of the 4 buttons. Now, on top of that, they give you this little keychain, and there's a reason for that. This is a ZWave button, so it can go quite far. It has quite the range away from your Samsung SmartThings or your hub that you're utilizing. So that's one of the nice benefits of ZWave. And what I've done with this is I've set up a number of different automations in a couple of different ways. Now, the first one is very simple. It is just the single button press, and you can see the lights went off behind me again. So I just set that up just the same as my other button, just to show you that really they can do the same thing. Now, if I hold that first button, a very different thing happens. So you can see I'm sitting in the dark here now. It turned off all of my studio lighting. So I've attached it to a lot of different things. That's actually a couple of smart plugs, as well as the 2 Philips Hue lights beside me. So you can really set this up to do a lot of things. Now, just to show you the versatility and how far you can go with this, I actually have a Sonos speaker here that, again, I've connected to Samsung SmartThings. So your hub would have to be able to do this, or you could use a service like If This Then That to push out a command out of this button. As I press it, there you go. So it's actually started my Sonos speaker. Now the third button here, this is a little bit of a different thing, and I'm actually going to start my recorder here so you guys can see this. As I press the third button, I'm actually setting my home into the home mode. Now, if I was to hold, and you heard that, I got a little notification of it. If I hold the button, it actually sets my home to away. So as I go ahead and leave, and there it is again, as I go and leave, I can set my home to an away mode and I can utilize that to trigger my security system on. Now, if I have this in the car with me, then just before I drive away, because ZWave doesn't reach forever, I can go ahead and trigger my system on and off. And obviously, as you drive up, you could press this, and should start to open your mind to things like triggering your garage door open with the press of a button like this. Now, the fourth button I've set up for a couple of different scenes that I've set up inside of Samsung SmartThings. Very powerful stuff as well. Now, the third button is actually this Flic button, and they have a new version coming out, and they also have a hub, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but this is a low energy Bluetooth connection that is connected to my phone essentially indefinitely. As they come into range, I can go ahead and utilize that. Now, once they are paired, you can set up a click, a double click, and a hold. So you're kind of hearing a bit of a pattern here with these different buttons. Now, I've set this one up to be more of a phone manager than anything. Now, I can click once and it will drive a Find My Phone type of sound out of my phone. Now, when I hold this button, I can actually trigger on a timer. So this is something that I do fairly often, and with buttons like this sitting around your home, if I hold the button, it will actually trigger on a timer. And again, I'm going to set a little recording there just so you can see that timer set for a minute right now, and it will go off after a minute. Now, while I wait for that alarm to get through, I'll talk about the Flic Hub really quickly. The Flic Hub allows this to maintain a Bluetooth connection with that hub instead of your phone, and therefore uses your home Wi-Fi after that to trigger different automations. So it makes it a little more stable. It makes it a little more user-friendly. You don't always have to have Bluetooth on your phone and maintain that connection. Now, this timer is going to go, and it is a little bit scary, so I'm just going to be quiet here and prepare. I've gone ahead and I've connected my SwitchBot here to If This Then That, and I've also connected Flic to If This Then That. Now, if I double tap, I can actually cause, you heard the little sound there, I can actually cause this little SwitchBot to go. Now, I've been utilizing this on my PC for a little while, or another one of these on my PC, and you can see it would hold my power button. So I also have another button set up as a PC manager, but you can also utilize these Flics for a number of different things. So now you've seen a number of different setups, and I just want to talk a little bit about some of the additional things that you can do and how that really benefits people. And when you think about these buttons being wireless, being able to move around your home, people with mobility issues can really utilize something like this next to them. So it really becomes a powerful thing. People who also don't have to remember what they're doing. It's much easier to remember. If I press this once, it will find my phone. If I press it twice, it'll turn on my computer. It's not hard to remember those things, and it becomes natural very quickly, even with multiple buttons around. And you can label multiple buttons, as I've seen people do in home tours. They find little creative ways to label these buttons in different ways. And so this really drives, number one, adoption, people utilizing these smart systems to their fullest extent. And once that starts to happen, you can introduce more and more as you go forward and make their lives better and better. So guys, I really hope that a video like this has helped you think of a couple of different ways to utilize buttons in your smart home. All the links to these products are down below in the description, of course. And otherwise, guys, don't hate, automate.